Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. I'm Kayode Okikili. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, endless issues that we always have to raise at all times, but then we'll go straight to the papers this morning again, and Mr. Dayo Akintobi joins us for the review today. He is the publisher of today's community newspapers. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Always a delight to be here.
Okay, so the unending issues are here again. The Vanguard newspaper leads with insecurity, army overstretched. That's according to the Senate, and has a number of riders. Says army isn't supposed to be involved in civil security. Asks them to go after bandits and kidnappers. Driver shot. Mother, 3 children, 5 others abducted in Ondo. 3 feared dead. 150 vehicles. 50 shops destroyed in Lagos clash. You know, on the front pages of the papers yesterday, it was agog with at least 3 different insecurity issues from 3 to 4 different states. There was some records in Delta, in Katsina, in Kaduna. Those 3 I remember vividly, and I think 1 or 2 others, also happened yesterday. And then for us to be having this while we're still grappling with issues with the police, I don't know where we go from here.
Insecurity seems to be the order of the day now. It seems to be the norm and not the exception. And everywhere you look across the country, in Lagos here yesterday, there was a major skirmish in Mushin yesterday between various cult groups, and it seems to be that people have a perception that the police, the morale of the police is low. They're a bit demoralized. Maybe they're kind of intimidated a bit by what happened by the protests, and as a result, they're not working at optimum levels, which of course gives opportunity to bandits and a lot of other nefarious people to ramp up their activities in terms of insecurity. So you now find the army, which by its very existence is for external security. Army is not constitutionally empowered to have anything to do with...
Not even by training.
No, not by training. Nothing to do with engagement at a national level. But we're finding the army is already engaging with Boko Haram, is already engaging with banditry, because these things have overwhelmed the police over time. And so we've had to get the army involved in certain local skirmishes as well. And the army itself is now overstretched, unfortunately.
And then what then would happen is what the fears would be. The one you mentioned at Mushin is one where, the Vanguard newspaper says 3 feared dead, 150 vehicles, 50 shops destroyed in that Lagos clash. And usually, it's not that we don't know that these things are going to happen. We usually have that information, security, intelligence, they always say it. But then, how these things still happen is something that baffles a number of people. Anyway, you want to say something to that?
Indeed, I was just going to comment on the fact that we've been battling this insecurity issue for a very long time, and now it's taking different dimensions. It's of course the police is involved, the army is involved, and we don't seem to have the right solutions yet, because as opposed to de-escalating, it is escalating, and it's also getting multidimensional. So I think we need to actually take a very deep look and try and restructure the entire security apparatus. If it means replacing the service chiefs, if it means more funding. Senate is now complaining about the army is overstretched, they don't have enough money, their equipment, their training is outdated. So if we have those kind of issues with the army, imagine the systemic problems we have with the police as well.
But don't forget that the constables, they've been trained, and yesterday Dailies had it that they're waiting to be deployed. Do you think when they're eventually deployed, if they eventually deployed, do you think that might be a game changer in all of this?
Well, my understanding is they're supposed to be deployed to various communities across the country. So the question we should ask ourselves is what has been done with them that's any different from the existing apparatus? Were they trained differently? Have they been equipped properly? Are they motivated well? Their remuneration, their incentives, what are they? If they're coming in under the existing structure, we can't expect much more from them than what we're getting already. So it's not just a function of numbers. It's not just throwing more and more operatives at the problem. It's a matter of the quality and the training and the funding and the incentives. It's a whole package. to make a difference.
All right, right above the nameplate of the Vanguard newspaper, border closure not reason for maltreatment of Nigerian traders in Ghana. That's the way the Vanguard newspaper captions that story. It's ascribed to Dabire, the DG of NITCOM this morning, and in a number of issues we're also discussing that conversation yesterday, But then that issue of Nigeria and Ghana dates back many years. The fact that it's either sustained or shape-shifting definitely is something disconcerting.
It is, especially because when you look at the tenets of ECOWAS, that was supposed to foster economic cooperation to where these kind of things shouldn't happen, where whether in Nigeria here or in Ghana or any West African country, these type of disagreements are all captured under the understandings of this economic cooperative organization of these countries. And so when you see traders having problems in what supposedly should be a cooperating country under the agreement, it's more deep-seated and historical than just the fact that, for a government to wake up one day and say, you have to pay $1 million to be able to have a license to trade in our country, which is not captured anywhere in the ECOWAS agreement, and which is also something that's so unrealistic. People who are selling mobile phones and accessories and things who don't even turn over 1/10 of that are being asked to pay a license fee that's outrageous. So it's not really looking for the licensing fee, it's just trying to ask them to get out. The reason, ostensibly, unofficially, is because they're astute, smart businessmen who figured out how to undercut the local competition. They're selling more, they're profiting more, and the local person is suffering. So what we're seeing here is protectionism as opposed to actual cultural strife.
So it's beyond even the politics that some people also allude that is reason for the impasse of dealing with the real issues.
I think so. I really think that it has more to do with pure business. I think it is strictly an economic issue that the traders, the business people in Ghana have had it up to here because they can't compete, and they can't compete effectively against their Nigerian counterparts. So they're pulling their patriotic card and saying, look, you have to protect me, your citizen, against the depredations of a usurper who's coming from another country.
So are you in support of sending a plane or a bus for the traders to come back home?
Well, 753 of them have said they would like to be repatriated back to Nigeria. I think they found their way to go there on their own. I think it's their obligation and their responsibility to find their way how to get back here. But yes, we should welcome them back. They are people. They are patriots. They belong here. We should do everything we can to get them back here and settle them back home. As long as they've said they want to voluntarily come back, they see it's a hostile environment, it's not going to work for them. And if they're as astute businessmen as I imagine they are, they'll thrive here even more. So let them come back and help us develop our own country here.
Vanguard Sports has Eagles in redemption fight in Sierra Leone. Ambassador dangles cash for Leone Stars to beat Eagles. Well, I don't even know what a big game from that one.
Watching that match.
The euphoria was palpable. We have four goals up. Shut the TV, put out the lights, and let's go to bed. It's done and dusted. It's over with. And then you blink and you come back and it's suddenly 4-4. That was heartbreaking.
So are you rooting for the Eagles to maybe pull a win?
Without
what do you expect?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
It's 2 against 1, yes.
Our boys will do us proud.
I don't want to say it yet.
Our boys will do us proud.
Okay.
They will make up for that.
Okay, we look forward to that.
Slip, yes.
Of course, we support our team, always. Take a look at the front page of a Daily Trust. The lead story concerns security also, but the angle is quite shocking. You see, kidnappers blocked Kaduna-Abuja road 4 times on Sunday. That's coming from the villagers. They raped our daughters. That's also coming from the villagers. 8 ABU students among abductees. Witnesses say more than 15 killed. Army and Kaduna government insists only 2 were killed, and you see bandits kill many in Igabi village. Now this Kaduna-Abuja road has been in the news several times. Well, recently, it's not been in the news, and that's because it said, well, security has been deployed. We have patrol teams, the army, the police, back and forth. And, a lot of people opted for the rail. But gradually, I think people were going back to the roads since they felt that, security was back. But now you see that they actually blocked the road 4 times on Sunday, according to the account of villagers. And you wonder, where were the security operatives during that period?
The impunity with which the bandits operate these days lets you believe that security is completely ineffective, ineffectual, and non-existent. Especially that road is notorious. Yeah. And from time to time, we've always heard these kind of things happening. But for bandits to have the free-willing ability 4 times in one day, it means they have no compunction, no worries at all that they could be apprehended or that there could be any kind of reprisal from the security authorities. So it means, as I said earlier, we need to rethink our security architecture. This is out of hand now. Everywhere you look, it's insecurity. Everywhere you look, for bandits to be running riots with no restrictions whatsoever, speaks to the first duty of any government is the protection of life and property of its citizens. After that, then we start talking about welfare. And if at this point bandits can run riots 4 times in one day in the same place and they get away with it each and every time, it goes to show that the government is not meeting up to its primary obligation to the people.
Would you lay that at the foot of the security architecture or the security system, in the light of the call for state police, community policing, and all of those things?
It's a systemic issue, and it's not just a one-size-fits-all problem. It doesn't begin with just saying, let's deploy local police. Yes, I've always felt that police should come from where they police. They should know the terrain, they should speak the language, they should be familiar with the people. I think it will make intelligence flow better. It will make the police be able to relate better with their community. But it doesn't end there and begin there. It has to be a whole systemic shift. It has to do with the morale of the police. Many of them at this point are not ready to die for this country. They're not ready to put their lives on the line to secure lives and property because they don't feel they're appreciated enough. So it takes a lot more. There's also the issue of weaponry, training. There's so much more than just local policing. But I do think that will help to some extent if there is a local aspect to policing in Nigeria.
Yeah, the pictures on the front page show the kidnapped victims that were rescued, shot, a bus driver that was injured. Just right there for you. But right under the nameplate, you see how prices of bread, others raised inflation to 14.23%. You mentioned welfare to an extent, and it's not just onions now. This is across board. And we got latest figures from the MBS saying the inflation rate. We're getting to a record now. If we have this for a few more months, we'll get to a record. And you wonder, is there a slowing down of this?
Well, it wasn't unexpected that the inflation rate would rise. I'll tell you why. Because we've been hit by a triple whammy of so many things converging at one time that have had debilitating effects on the economy. For one thing, of course, there was a pandemic and there was a lockdown. Then there's the increase in energy prices. Then, of course, there's this whole fuel increase. There's so many things that have all come together to raise the cost of living. Now, when the CPI looks at inflation, what they do is they have a staple. They have a grocery cart where every month they take specific items, yam, onion, tomatoes, staples, and they compare the price month to month. Now, bandits have stopped farmers from harvesting in the north, so that has reduced the quantity of food that's able to come down south. And when you have a reduction in supply, price goes up.
Definitely.
And so these kind of things have been in the pipeline. The skyrocketing cost of food is not an overnight phenomenon. We've seen the indices, the underlying issues have militated towards this thing happening for a long time. So unfortunately, salaries are not rising concurrently. So it is a big problem in terms of the pocketbook of the average consumer.
Well, that's Daily Trust for you this morning.
Well, the Nigerian Tribune has this one: how Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine find affected petrol price. You're probably wondering how that is. The inside pages have the stories, pages 3 and 30 specifically. Says Nigerians will get used to petrol deregulation. NLC rejects fuel price hike, demands immediate reversal. Another COVID-19...
Or is there an or, else?
Maybe on the inside pages. Okay. Another COVID-19 vaccine, 94.5% effective. No core member in our 37 camps positive for virus. That's according to the NYSC. But the lead is quite exciting.
Because you see on the Daily Trust, 8 core members test positive for coronavirus.
And then perhaps this is a retraction on the part of...
okay, you know what? Inside pages, right?
Yeah, but which of these gets to you?
Well, I'm excited about the second vaccination coming out of America. And I think it gives us great hope that we will very soon be able to overcome this pandemic, this disease. Of course,
But you also know that I think it's the World Health Organization that said finding a vaccine doesn't mean that we end coronavirus.
No, I didn't say it would end. I said it will give us a better handle on it, because what it does is that the vaccine prevents you from catching it. It doesn't help those who already have it. It doesn't help the virus that's already in the system. It will prevent those who don't have it now from getting it. But remember, there are issues of logistics, distribution. There's 6 billion people in the world, and at best, maybe they can produce several million of these things per month. So it's going to take a number of years before the entire world can ever hope to be completely vaccinated. So it's not as if it will eliminate COVID. We still have to maintain security protocols. It just seems to reduce the ability of the virus to spread.
You know, from another angle, pardon me.
Yes.
Do you think this will have swung? If this had come before the US elections, I'm just thinking, do you think the results may have been different?
One of the things that is counted against outgoing President Trump is that his handling of the COVID pandemic was disastrous. They say he was a bit too nonchalant, a bit incompetent in handling it. So I don't doubt that that had some impact. Although I also think that the downward spiraling economy also played a role, because in America it's always about the economy. No president has ever been re-elected in America when the economy is on a downward spiral. So I think the economy played a big role. But it's quite possible that if this had come out, and I'll tell you why. Moderna yesterday was government funded as opposed to Pfizer that invested 2.5 billion of its own money. Moderna and a few others were given money by the US government. So President Trump could have beat his chest and claimed to have been responsible for finding this vaccine if this had come out before the election. Who knows what that might have done to his re-election prospects.
But the lead story is also very interesting. How Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine find affected petrol price.
Well, the Minister of State, Temipre Silva, said yesterday that once Pfizer announced its findings, it boosted the stock market in general, it boosted equities in general, and so oil stocks and oil prices went up. And what he's saying is once oil prices go up in a deregulated market, it affects the pump price. I think he was a bit economical with the truth, or perhaps he wasn't explaining clearly enough, because the point is, even when oil prices go up immediately, it doesn't affect the price pump immediately because there's stocks already in the pipeline.
2.9 billion liters according to the NNPC.
Absolutely. So that's why I said I think he was being a bit disingenuous by saying that, oh, the oil price goes up today, tomorrow it affects the price at the pump. There's processes that take place, and it'll take months for that uptick in the international oil market to reflect all the way downstream to the pump price. So I think it was more a thing about government sees that there's not a lot of public support for a price increase at this time, and they were trying to explain it away as best they could.
But, okay. But do you think that that explanation suffices for the average Nigerian?
No, I don't, because the timing is a bit awkward. I think when government decided to do deregulation, I don't think they engaged the stakeholders well enough. I understand the mechanics of deregulation, and I understand why it needed to be done. For example, the government doesn't have the money to uphold a subsidy. Besides that, the subsidy was going to the hands of a very few people. Granted, we shouldn't make excuses for the fact that the regime wasn't properly policed, but there was so much corruption in the subsidy regime that it ended up hurting the average man. So I understand why subsidy had to be done, but the populace wasn't carried along properly to where they would understand that a sacrifice was being required of us. Then again, the government didn't make its own sacrifices. I think they could have offered cushioning effects. Say, for example, we've raised the price of petrol to 170, but here's what we're going to do. We're cutting our own wages in half. All our allowances we're eliminating.
That would be good to see, right?
So that you could see that we're also making a sacrifice. And I think that would have been more, it would have been more amenable to the people's appreciation. People would have said, okay, you're asking something of us, but you're giving something in exchange. So there are things they could have done that would have made it more palatable to the average man.
Maybe they'll make that announcement today.
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Or tomorrow. We'll take a look at New Telegraph. COVID-19 vaccine also leads discovery liable for fuel price hike. FG, well, you've talked about that. NLC rejects increment, seeks immediate reversal. I'm still waiting for that, or else. Moderna, our vaccine is 94.5% effective against virus. So from 90 to 94.5%. Maybe the next one will be 100.1%. You see, US, Canada, Japan, EU, Israel order for vaccines. Well, Nigeria is here somewhere, especially because, of course, the WHO is ensuring that, other countries get access to this. So don't worry, if you don't see Nigeria on the front page.
It's in the others?
Maybe.
Somewhere.
Pages 3 and 4 of the New Telegraph this morning, and you see that story about inflation. But right under the big pictures, you see FG, CBN, National Assembly pledged to support Lagos rebuilding. Lagos really went through a lot this past few weeks, so rebuilding is definitely something we need right now, right?
Well, reverse fuel price hike now, Labour tells FG. That's how the Daily Independent leads the front page this morning of its own story. Reverse fuel price hike now, Labour tells FG, says there's limit to what we can bear. Nigerians will get used to deregulation, says FG. Well, I guess there's limit to what we can bear. Is the or else you're looking for? Or maybe not?
No, that's not. There needs to be, do this, else we'll do this. I don't think I caught that.
Okay. CBN plans new bridge bank to assist weak lenders. That's also right there on the front page. And then right above the nameplate, Afenifere Southwest governors on warpath over NSARS fallouts, and a number of other stories you'll find quite interesting right there on the front page of the Daily Independent.
Well, News Directs, rebuild Lagos. Sanwo-Olu cries to NAS, federal executive, others for help. Rules private stakeholders for partnership, CBN to provide cheap credit for affected businesses to rebuild and restock. That's coming from the vice president, because watching these people narrate the experience, how long it took them to even build these businesses, and now this is happening. Some of them, insurance can't help them because of the clauses and what have you. So seeing and hearing the vice president saying that, well, the CBN will come in. Do you think this is enough? Is there any other angle we're not covering with all this Rebuild Lagos initiative?
No, I think it's good that the federal government is stepping in. I also think the trust fund that was launched yesterday, which is seeking donations both from government and from private. Lagos took a very big hit, and Lagos being the economic nerve center of the country, when Lagos sneezes, the whole country catches pneumonia. So yes, all stops need to be pulled out. The senator for Lagos West repeated this long-standing call for Lagos to be given special status, kind of like the FCT has its own special status, because Lagos is so pivotal to the daily existence of this country that when what happened, when an incident like what happened in the riots and the protests happens, it really has a debilitating effect on our overall economy. Yes.
So you're saying if you have your 5,000 naira, give it to Rebuilding Lagos, your 1,000 naira, Everybody should be a part
Every
of
little
this.
bit helps. Everybody should be involved because it affects all of us at the end of the day. Every Nigerian is affected by what has happened in Lagos. So it's not just the organized private sector, it's not just the government, federal and state, it's us as individuals, because when Lagos thrives, we all thrive.
Well, I think those are facts and those are things that we can see. Let's hope there will be no politicking around that one over time. But we have to thank you very much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher, Today's Community News. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
Always a delight to be here.
All right, we're back in a moment to take on the issues for the day. To stay with us. So you are not unaware that the federal government at the Senate hearing yesterday told Nigeria that 3 power plants are to be sold for the total of 434 billion naira. A number of questions are around that one already. Well, what has happened to the sales that we have made before? How productive, how helpful has that been? And where do we go from here? How useful, how productive, how profitable for Nigeria in the long term or even in the short term would it be for these power plants to be sold at this time? These are some of the issues we'll be looking at as we take a look at Nigeria's power privatization plans over the years. We have 2 gentlemen joining us for this conversation. Joe Ajero is Deputy President, NLC, and General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees, NUEE. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Ajero.
Thank you.
And we also have an energy expert and the CEO, CCS Technology Limited, Otho Siago. Both gentlemen are in the Lagos studio with us. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so when you got that information, is it like, here we go again, or at last?
I think I was happy that at last government is trying to take the right step in the right direction. Because for so many years, I personally have advocated that government need to get their hands completely out of power generation, transmission, and distribution. For more than 60 years, that's exactly what government has been doing. Trying to run the electricity subsector like a kind of a social work team. But it's very clear that it's no longer working. There is no way government can handle this electricity subsector, knowing fully well that what it takes to keep it running is huge. And on the other hand, for government to run it at the actual rate, the actual cost per kilowatt hour of electricity, it is becoming very, very difficult for government to lay it bare and allow market forces to determine what Nigerians should actually pay for electricity. So this is the right step.
But, if you look at what we have done so far in the privatization sector, especially in the privatization of the power sector, the electricity sector, have we fared any significantly better? I mean, this whole process started and was kind of culminated around 2012 and all of that. So between 2012 and now, if you look at if you take an assessment of all of the privatization efforts, the activities of the private sector, led initiative in the electricity sector, how significant has it been?
For many years, government tried doing it on its own. It was very clear, it was a working. So in 2005, the Electricity Reform Act was enacted. The idea was for government to tactically withdraw from the scene and allow private organizations to take charge of power generation, transmission, and distribution. But government couldn't just do it suddenly. What it did was to, initiate it piecemeal.
Gradually.
But it's so clear that over the past, since 2005, we have not actually achieved what was set out to achieve. Because currently you discover that electricity is not still available. And the plan to raise the generating capacity to 10,000 megawatts as of today still looks like a mirage. because government is still involved. And we have been saying, get out of the stage, allow private companies to handle this. Let electricity be priced appropriately. It may go up momentarily, but with time, when we have business owners coming in to generate electricity, distribute, and transmit, with time, because of market forces, the price of electricity will definitely go down. But you, as I used to say, you cannot take a goat to the market. You sell the goat, and at the end of the day, you have refused to release the goat, the rope, to the man who has just paid you for the goat. So as a result, government is still having a lot of influence in this subsector. So it's making those who are willing to come into the sector to be a bit nervous. And the discos and the gencos who are supposed to come in fully to recapitalize and run this business like a very good entity, they are finding it difficult because discos, for example, government is still keeping about 40% equity. So it's so difficult because government's involvement is still there.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to talk about that one, but let me take Mr. Ajero's opening comments on this. Where do you stand on this? You work actively in the sector.
Well, if you follow the analysis of the last speaker, you will discover that, government is still funding the sector, despite the might around private sector being solvent. Government is still building power station and transferring it to the cronies. Well, what you are seeing the last few days or years is not just privatization. It's just allocation of the power plants to those in government. Now, how can government privatize and then build 3 more power stations? And then they are still selling the power. Is government now a contractor that builds and transfers to people? And Nigerians are still not seeing this. And somebody is telling you that government is removing hand so that the private sector will bring in their money. In the last 5 years, government has spent 1.7 trillion for the same people. You sold your house for 400 billion. You gave the buyer 1.7 trillion. For goodness sake, when will Nigerians start thinking seriously about this? For the past 10 years before privatization, government didn't spend 1 trillion. And you just analyze that government is still controlling 40%. Government controls 40%, but handed over 100%. Government is supposed to control 40%, but handed 100% over to the private sector. And the private sector have never declared 1 naira dividend for government's 40%. And we are still blind about this whole issue. We still can't see, that something wrong is happening. So it's a question of, government saying they are privatizing, when in actual fact, they have not privatized. Up to now, nobody knows the owners of these companies. Nigerians are keeping quiet. You know how solvent they were. At the point of privatization, they were saying that those are people with financial muscle, technical competence, and they are attracting foreign direct investment. As we talk now, no single company came into Nigeria. So what's the essence of foreign direct investment? Where does that one come from?
Are you referring to the discos? When you say
whether
Nigerians
discos and
don't know,
gencos.
or the gencos, which
Both.
of them? And you say categorically that this is government, in quotes, handing it over to government. Which of them?
The seller is the buyer, clearly. Because there's no way, you will sell a company for 400 billion and then you put 1.7 trillion into the same company, and for somebody that bought 400 billion and you that bought 1.7 trillion, you control 40% and the person controls 60%. Come on now.
So if I get you correctly, you're not against privatization. It's just the process that you're against. Am I correct?
Oh, no. You see, privatization is what you are seeing. It's fraud. Very fraudulent. It's an exercise that, will not produce electricity. He mentioned it that power has not been produced. And tariff has been going on. This last one was the 5th tariff increase. Yet power has not improved. And somebody is still advocating for the process to continue that way. You know, it is painful to Nigerians. There is no power generated. Last time they told you that they haven't band A, band B, band C. So what problem has that one solved? Unless you have to rethink this process and think of a way forward, privatization is a total failure.
So what's the way forward? Because, I mean, ideally, privatization is meant to bring in private investors. I mean, people draw the analogy of the telecom industry and say, well, this is some sort of privatization. Private, practitioners came in and look what they've done with the sector. So in the same case for this, power sector also, privatization is in quote meant to achieve what it achieved in the telco. So what is the way forward for you if it is not privatization?
Well, there was no privatization in the telecom sector. I think they were trying, it's just technological change. That you have GSM that happen all over the world, the GSM technology. But even in Nigeria, they had to destroy NITEL first for MTN and Glo to operate. Because if NITEL is to operate today and they compete, because you can't have privatization without competition. Now, if NITEL is to be around to compete with Glo, with MTN, then you will see. That's
when you say they, who are they?
The state, the Nigerian state. As at today that I'm talking with you in this station, NITEL has not been privatized, but it has been vandalized. Go and tell me who bought NITEL. So that is exactly what you are saying. And I've given this example before. You don't need to kill MTA for channels to operate. They have to operate side by side, and then you have competition. That's all about the market. Market is all about choice.
Are you saying, in effect, that this whole idea of privatization is actually some gimmick by some people that you imagine are right there just to frustrate the state?
It's a fluke, because if you have NEPA that is inefficient, but the tariff is low, and then about 25 companies were earlier licensed to participate in the power sector, and none of them could participate. So if they had come side by side to compete with NEPA that was generating 4,000 megawatts, assuming they come out with 2,000 megawatts or 3,000 megawatts, now the generation will go up. But now you took that same 4,000 megawatts you say is inefficient from NEPA, and you split it into 18 and shared it among your friends. And what we still have is 4,000 megawatts. How does that increase the output?
All right, Mr. Ejero, thank you, Mr. Jago. It would seem like, Mr. Ejero may have been copying from the Senate, the president of the Senate's notes, when he himself said, there is a need for us to take another look at this whole privatization process. And, a number of people will probably agree with them when they say, look, we have made this sacrifice, and from what he has also said, the privatization has happened. A good number of the GENCOs have been fully privatized, but a few of them maybe, not yet. The DISCOs, 40% still belong to the federal government. And the kind of resources that the federal government continues to pour in to the power sector, into the entire value chain, is quite, significant. So, again, I ask you, given all these facts and the position of Mr. Ejero, how productive would you say this privatization exercise has been so far?
The idea is a very good one. But the problem we are having is government that is holding back. We have a very good...
when you say government is
holding back, because you cannot privatize and you are still playing in the subsector. Okay, look at the telecommunication subsector. There is none of these companies that you can say is owned by government, or government is having strong equity in some of these companies. So they run at their own. The three big telecommunication GSM companies, they are running their business on their own. So government needs to treat the electricity subsector the same way. If you privatize, you must get off the scene.
But you know that the electricity sector is seriously different from the telecom communication.
No, that's where we get it wrong.
Let me explain, and then you can explain your part. The telcos do not have generation companies, transmitting companies, and distribution companies. You know, maybe they're not that cumbersome. They don't have a bulk trading company. They don't have so many other, you know, segments that have to deal with it. It will seem like it's a pretty straightforward thing. I call, you receive, you know, just like that. There are collaborations among themselves, you know, both locally and internationally. But
No.
it's quite. Some would believe it's so much more complex in the electricity sector.
No, Ayo is basically the same thing. Even the telecoms you talked about, you generate, you transmit, because you pick up your phone, you superimpose the audio signal into the RF signal.
I'm the one that is doing it. It's not just some company elsewhere.
I'm trying to explain to you.
Okay.
You generate radio frequency signal. You allow it to be carried by the audio. I mean, the radio frequency carries the audio. It's the same thing. You have transmission system. It's the same. The problem is that we've been saying it, that government don't have any business going into business. And that is the problem we're having in the electricity subsector. Government has lots of responsibility where financing is needed. So government should stop financing the electricity subsector. Sell the discos, the equity they have there. Transmission Company of Nigeria, I don't see any reason why government is keeping it. Then the gencos that are there, government has sold some parts. Sell the remaining. All what government needs to do is regulatory framework to ensure that each of these companies that are running these businesses are doing the right thing, but not government putting scarce resources into funding these electricity projects. Now, allow gas price to be what it is in international market. Allow electricity price, float it, so that what it costs to generate 1 kilowatt of electricity, allow the discos to sell at that rate. So that, as I said, at the initial stage, you may have a very high rate, maybe by 100 naira per kilowatt hour. But the power of competition over the years will drag these prices down. If you have less than 2, 3, 4 players in the system, there will be recapitalization. People will come in and invest. But when government, you are the seller, you are also the investor, it's not going to work. We've been on this for more than 40 years. And it's very clear it's not helping this country.
Because clearly, I mean, look at the entire value chain so far of electricity. The privatization process has been on for a while. And perhaps part of the reason that government is still, you know, relatively involved is to ensure that one of the electoral promises, one of the promises made, that look, if you give me this job, I'm going to get this done, is achieved. Okay, so government wants to ensure that that is done. All right, and the one way that they believe they could be able to do that is to remain in the system and ensure that the proper things are done.
No, if they remain in the system, we'll move forward. Some few months.
How is government an encumbrance in the delivery of power?
Now, let me just give you a very simple example. Currently, the price of electricity, if you are to generate 1 kilowatt hour, you are going to spend about 80 to 90 naira. But how much? How much is 1 kilowatt hour of electricity currently? Maybe 40 naira. Now, who is bridging the gap? The other day, the discos requested for 702 billion naira from government. That is the difference between what it costs to generate 1 kilowatt of electricity and what the discos are selling. So government is saying that we don't have resources. So should government be putting in 700 billion naira every 6 months in discos? When these resources currently available to government is so scarce?
You know, Mr. Ajero,
so they should hands off completely.
But he
and allow market forces to determine what will be the ideal price of electricity.
But
Then once you do that,
1 minute.
you'll see investment flowing into that subsector.
Right, but you remember he said, I mean, with the case of discos, and I mean, ever since the privatization, that even though that has been done, you still find the federal government pumping in money into the sector. So the question now is, what is a guarantee that when this happens, I mean, these assets are sold, the government will still be doing what it has been doing over the past years? That's the question. But let me take on Mr. Ajero, because it means when you raised some of the points, he was chuckling. So I just need to get his response to some of the issues raised. First, he says government does not have any business doing business. Do you agree with that?
Well, he is here to tell us the business of government. You know, if business of government is not for public good, you know, if you look at it, government is supposed to generate revenue. Government is supposed to work, you know, for social well-being of the people and economic well-being. But without going into that, you see, what he's advocating for is for Nigerians to suffer and finance the greed of the so-called private sector, the greed. So if they come to tell you that the market force says is 20 naira per kilowatt hour, government should not talk that it should be 10 naira. Then you sell it for 20 naira per kilowatt hour. Now, what he's equally telling you is that even this tariff you are paying now, that the whole country is crying, that is not up to half of what you should pay, even when you are not receiving services in the country. You know, that is what he's saying. That is his anger with government. His anger with government is that government should remove their hands so that they deal with Nigerians. They will pay high. You know, I'm saying this because, you know, it's important for us to situate the argument. He has not said that government is doing anything bad, but he's still building power stations. Because 7 years after privatization, none of the companies have built a power plant, not even one. Now, in the absence of this government intervention, building 1 or 2 power stations, handing it over to them, what do you think will be the power situation in the country? You know, now he's equally calling up government removing hand. Government sold, you know, 60% to the discos and handed 100% over to them. So why is government a problem now? Because even its investment there, you know, it is not getting any profit from it. So let him situate where government, and in all the country of the world, the transmission sector of the economy is usually under government control because of its, you know, because of its security implication.
Okay, Mr. Ajero, here's what we'll do. Because, I mean, on one hand, earlier on, you said, well, it's government selling to government. So you didn't quite trust the government in that sense. But now you're saying, well, the government playing a major role in the sector still has a way of reducing its impact on people. So we'll try to balance this, but we'll quickly go on break.
Okay.
When we return, we'll get your response to this issue and more. Please stay with us. To discuss Nigeria's power sector, it's always a huge conversation, really, because it's something you and I experience on a daily basis. Well, the latest about this is a privatization talk. And we still have with us Mr. Joe Ajero, Mr. Arthur Osiago. Now, Mr. Ajero, before we went on that break, I was trying to understand your position, really, because earlier on you said you didn't quite trust the government in this whole privatization exercise. You think that it's government selling to government in some sense, but still you say that you want government to be actively involved so they can, in quote, regulate and reduce the pressure that the citizen might face if this is entirely privatized. So how do you want the government to really go about this? Do you trust the government?
Well, the issue is not, the trust gap between us and government is wide already, so we're not even talking of that. If the whole privatization process wasn't equally transparent, you know, that's the point I'm making. But in this same instance, as it stands today, I'm saying that if government had not built another 3 or 4 power plants, which they are equally transferring to their friends, now, there will be no power in the country. That's the point I'm making exactly. You know, I'm saying that the entire private sector that took over this power sector, they don't have money. That between 2013 to date, they have not built even 1 power plant.
So, Mr. Ajero, you just said now that government, you know, is building these refineries and handing over power plants and handing over to their friends. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you mean by that. Who are the people who are friends of government, and are you saying that the privatization process is not transparent?
Oh, well, I mentioned in the course of my discussion that the privatization process is not transparent. Let me give you one example. They advertised Afam power plants for sale, and my union decided to come up with one company to bid. In terms of technical qualification, we were there. And at the end of the day, I don't want to mention names here, but at the end of the day, the BPE took the final bid to the company that was close to us. And at the end of the bid, they announced that that company won. And that company was supposed to, and then the union's company is, the reserve bidder. That company was supposed to pay within 6 months according to law and take over. A year and 6 months after, the union was still worrying them as a reserve bidder, and that's the process, to pay up and take over Afam power plant. They didn't do that until last week. The vice president now wrote that they should give it to that same company, even after the process had been violated. Now, we did this intentionally, to know what was happening there. So the process was not transparent, and let them announce the owners of these 18 successor companies in Nigeria. Let us know if the process is transparent. I repeat it here that the process has never been transparent.
Some listening to you right now saying that would say perhaps you are not happy with what happened, and your company or your own proposition was not accepted, and that is why you are embittered.
Well, my position on privatization from 2000 to date has been clear. It has been clear in the sense that I have analyzed at this forum that privatization will not work in Nigeria, that the tariff will go high, that there will be no accessibility, and there will be no affordability. That all these factors, that Nigeria, and the system they are using will not allow the process to work, and that privatization has not worked anywhere in the world.
So what will work, Mr. Ajaero?
What will work is efficiency of the public sector, because you are transferring public monopoly to private monopoly. If they had opened the market, and then because they licensed 25 companies to participate in the power sector, if they have deregulated it, so to say, and the companies compete NEPA out, that would be okay. Okay, let me give you an example. We are not lacking in private participation. NESCO in Jos started electricity generation, distribution, and transmission in 1929. They are still there today. I'm trying to draw this as an example so that you know that the private sector can really participate. But by the time you balkanize this and share it around 4,000 megawatts, and you expect efficiency, how can you get 4,000? How can you get efficiency?
So you're saying rather than buy it off the government, the private sector should build theirs and compete with the government. Is that what you're saying?
God bless you. And I gave you an example before that you don't need to kill NTA for AIT or channels to operate. They have to come into the sector and participate.
But the challenge now is, Mr. Ajaero, you know what has become of the power sector over the past years. And the question is, how long would we have to, ensure that the private sector works well? What is the target? You're talking about years if we're going to, make sure that our private sector is efficient. Do you think we can wait for that long?
Over the years, we got to 4,000 megawatts. The private sector joined and still remained at 4,000 megawatts. Why can't we do something different?
Well, some would also say that it's a function of the capacity of the infrastructure that government has at this point to get it done. So on the one hand, the generation companies have capacity to do, say, 8,000. Let's just imagine that they can do more than 4,000 megawatts. Fine. There is no way to store electricity. Yeah. So, but then the transmission capacity and the distribution capacity are not up to par. What do you think the GENCOs can do?
Well, the GENCOs, their duty, is to make sure at least they generate more than that. Remember the agreement they were giving. And
when they generate more than that and they cannot transmit and they cannot distribute,
no,
what happens?
At any point in time in Nigeria today, and I want you to go back, the transmission capacity, the GENCOs have not surpassed it. The transmission capacity, they have not surpassed it.
I know that Mr. Ajaero would have a thing or two to say on
Mr.
that.
But
I beg your pardon, Mr. Oswago. But just a moment, something that you said, Mr. Ajaero. You said that you want efficiency in the public sector so that the public sector can continue to handle this thing. If the public sector had been efficient enough over the years, why would there have been a need for privatization?
Well, they have been efficient, but government was not funding it. Remember, I told you that for 2-3 years before privatization, government did not put any one kobo into the power sector. But as of today, we are hearing of 1.7 trillion into the same sector. So how do you expect efficiency without funding? The power sector then, NEPA couldn't have built a power plant, clearly. And you brought the private sector, you say they have capital. And government is still funding them. This is conflict.
Well, someone is asking you on Twitter, Bodam Gwani says, we should ask you if the discos are making enough revenue to cover their current operational costs. Because your members are the ones running the discos, you should have the numbers. Do you?
If the discos are making more than enough money today, because even all the government 40%, the workers 10%, the government, the discos are still controlling them as of today. They are making enough money, to run the sector.
But the Gencos complain that they are being owed, I mean, millions, billions. The Gencos.
The Gencos are charging us gas on dollar. How can we generate gas in maybe Niger Delta, then use it to generate electricity? You convert it to gas and ask Nigerians to pay tariff.
Okay, I mean, the cup is kind of full, Mr. Arthur Shagu. A lot of issues. I don't know where you want to begin, but you know what? You could just get right into it.
My friend Joe is just speaking from the point of view of labor. Of course, I'm not surprised. But we've been on this conversation for more than 20 years. And it's very clear that we've not made any inroads in terms of progress so far. You see, we have a clear roadmap. I always like you giving this example. A clear roadmap in the telecom sector. The power sector, government is making it even more complex, and it's unnecessary. Everybody can generate electricity. I'm sure most of us will have generators in our home. It's as simple as that. Allow investors to come in. Sell what you have currently, the way they are.
100%.
Government should sell everything they have within the power sector 100%. Allow market forces to determine what is the right price of electricity. That's number one. Number two, the grid system. We are running a mono grid system where you generate electricity maybe from the Niger Delta and you plug it onto the grid, then you power up to 1,000 kilometers away with all the losses along the line. It's not going to help us. Grid capacity as of today is still less than 6,000 megawatts. We can sell off all these things and initiate a process to do a microgrid system where Lagos on its own can have a grid of its own, a microgrid. Abeokuta can have a grid on its own. Niger State can have a grid on its own. Then you do what we call power mix. Solar, gas, the other type of generation system. You infuse them into the grid. So we cannot have grid turbulence. Maybe in Shiroro and Lagos is on blackout. Lagos is big enough to have its own grid. All these things cannot be possible if government is still funding power.
Well, how about...
We have grown past that stage. If we continue with this idea that government must continue to put money in power, I can assure you, 30 years from now, don't expect electricity in Nigeria.
When he said that, how about the private investors build their plants rather than buy it of the government? Do you think that's a fair enough proposition?
If there is no rocket science in building any power station, you can even do 500 kilowatts of electricity in 3 months. There are trains that are valuable that you can bring into this country within 3 months, and you set it up in catchment, and you can generate even up to 1 megawatt. Private sector can do this, and they have done it in different parts of the world.
But you know, it's the same private sector privatization that the president of the Senate has been complaining about. The process, the entire, gamut of the whole thing, and how it has been unproductive.
It's not that it's unproductive. The problem I have been saying is that you sell these Gencos or Discos, and you are still playing in the business. So you are not allowing the owners of these businesses to run them the way it should be. And if government pull back, they are going to have resources to take care of other areas that are crying for government intervention. We should stop treating electricity as if it's social service. We've gone past that stage. And the bane of Nigeria's development is because we don't have electricity in this country. So we should take the bull by the horn and do it once and for all. And I give you 3 years, you see the metamorphosis in this country if we do this. But if we keep on pushing government to put scarce resources in this sector, we will move forward.
Well, we've seen like Mr. Ajero is not completely in agreement with you, Mr. Ajero.
Well, the issue is that he is saying government should stay away. If you remember, even before last month, government was paying them subsidy of 1.7 billion daily. And then that's government you are saying, take away your hand. Subsidy of 1.7 billion daily to the so-called private sector. Now, I think that's the role he's saying government should take away their hands. How does this disrupt process? I thought that even government, and that was why I accused government initially, was still giving them money.
Okay, so what is your own, takeaway on this one? What should we do if we're going to have productive?
My takeaway is that if you allow this private sector, there will be no electricity in this country in the next 6 months. Leave them. That he's saying now, let government not bring anyone cover. There will be the system will collapse. Let me tell you, all the transformers in the country are on obsolete. They are on overload. Nobody is replacing them. There's no replacement. There's no relief transformer. The same thing with the Gencos. None of them has built a new power plant.
Okay.
All over.
Yeah.
And he's telling you to leave them.
It's an ongoing conversation, definitely. The decision is not here. We've just tabled the issues for those who will take the decisions to be able to look at. But we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Mr. Joe Ajero is Deputy President of NLC and General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees, NUEE, as well as Arthur Usiago is an energy expert and CEO of CCS Technology Limited. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
Well, we're taking on the case of the 27 suspended LG chairman in Imo State. Now, this has been on for months now. I mean, it's something that goes back 2 administrations away in the state. But let's take a look at the issues and see how we can move forward with this one. And this morning we have joining us from our Abuja studio, Honorable Jude Mbachu, who's the Executive Chairman, Isialambana local government area of Imo State, and Inaya Onuegbu as well, the Commissioner for Lands, Imo State, is a legal practitioner. Interestingly, a former local government chairman. He also joins us from our Abuja studio. We'll also be joined by Matthias Emerbe, who's a legal practitioner and the publicity secretary of Imo Progressive Lawyers Association. He will be joining us via Zoom this morning. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Well, Honorable Mbachu, yeah, it's great to have you. If I can begin with you, this is something that has spanned months. I mean, 3 administrations now, from the administration of Governor Okorocha to Governor Hedioa, now Governor Uzodimma. But still, the impasse persists. Where are we right now? Because, I mean, things happen overnight, right? Has there been any updates to this crisis?
No, I thought they said Honorable Mbachu to take the first shot.
Well, I have to say that as we speak now, we are talking about going back to our offices on the 30th November this year, because we have waited for so long for the government of Imo State, for which we all are part of. I am an APC member, and as we speak, up till now, nothing has happened. But what we are talking about now is the fact that we are talking about the constitutional infraction in Nigeria, that the governors have consistently debased the constitution of Nigeria. And because of that, what we are talking about is the constitution. The constitution, we all know that is a grand norm. And I am saying that because the constitution is a grand norm, and that because the constitution has given us the power to go back to our office, because when you look at this section 7.1, everybody knows that it guarantees elected local government council in Nigeria. And the elected local government council in Nigeria must be there at all times. That is what the constitution guarantees. There is no court of law that can stop elected chairman from going to the office. Let me remind you something. We were elected by, for me personally, from Isalambano, I garnered 28,184 votes in my local government. What it means is that the people elected me. And that was on the 25th of August, 2018. And on the 27th of August, I was sworn in by the governor. The then governor was Governor Rochas Okorocha, and I had a constitutional mandate to represent my people for 3 years. And as we speak, on 7th June 2019, we were removed from our office by the then governor of Imo State. The question
Just clarification, Honorable.
Is there any reason
were you removed? Was it a removal
office?
or a suspension? Which was it? Because that has been a bone of contention also.
By the then governor. We were suspended from office.
Okay, so it was a suspension.
Hello? We were suspended from office.
All right, go ahead, please.
Yes, we were suspended from office. And what we are saying is that the suspension is illegal. The suspension is illegal. We cannot be talking about rule of law in Nigeria when the constitution of Nigeria is debased. The constitution of Nigeria says in section 7.1 that there must be a system of local government administration that must have a local government council that is guaranteed at all times. But what we are seeing today is the brazen disregard to the constitution. And we know in section 1, subsection 1, that it talks about supremacy of the constitution. Now we are talking about supremacy of the constitution. And it's the same constitution that provides for immunity for the governors. We seek to obey it because there is immunity for them provided by the constitution. It's this constitution in section 130 that provides for the fact that there must be a president of this country. Section 131 says that the president of this country must be executive president and he must be commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Is the constitution. Now, the same constitution in section 7.1 says that there must be a system of local government that must have a democratically elected local government council and that this system must be guaranteed. But as we speak, the governors have consistently and brazenly disregarded this aspect of the constitution.
Okay, let's get Mr. Honorable's opening
why must the
comments
governors
on this.
choose?
Right.
Why
You
must
can
the
land on
governors
that.
choose the section of the constitution to respect?
Okay.
And the
so
one that
let's
does
get
not
Mr.
respect them, they don't
Honorable's
respect. But when
opening
it covers
statements
them, they
on
respect.
this so we can broaden the conversation. Now, this is something that your administration inherited in court, but you have made your position known. For your administration, you want to conduct fresh elections, but he has quoted the Constitution. They're leaning on two court judgments, the Supreme Court's judgment and the Federal High Court's judgment. But still, your administration says, well, we're moving forward to conduct fresh elections. How so?
Very much. I think it would be better to lay some background to this situation. In 1999, Governor Achiku Denwa, then governor, had a local government elected administration in line with Section 7.1 of the Constitution. That administration lasted for 3 years, and there was an interim where they had a transition committee for 1 year before another election that ushered in a democratically elected local government in Imo State. When Governor Chike was leaving, he instituted, when that tenure expired, a transition committee, which Governor Hakim inherited and subsequently reappointed. Governor Hakim conducted a local government election, which brought my team in. I'm on this program because I am an interested party in the election Governor Hakim conducted. I'm happy they cited the case of Enyin Nonebu and 26 others. I am the Enyin Nonebu. Now, when Governor Hakim lost election, we were already in office 9 months, 10 months plus. Governor Rochas, Etelbatana Yokorocha, or popularly called Rochas, took over on the 29th of May, 2019. On 6th of June 2019, he unilaterally dissolved the subsisting elected local government administration. That was the first time in Imo history a democratically elected local government was being dissolved. We went to court, ended up obtaining a Supreme Court of Appeal judgment restoring us to the office. He resisted it by every manner of arrangement, including allowing some of the persons who now claim to be local government chairmen to go to the local government as thugs and occupy to prevent us from having access. He also claimed that our tenure was for 2 years, that there was an amendment of the local government law. Now we went to the court again to get our 3-year tenure and to recover the 13 months he kept us out. He resisted it until he served out 8 years in Imo State. He did not bother to conduct local government election until about 8 months to his departure, when he discovered that APC, his party, would allow delegates who are councillors, chairmen, and sundry appointees of the local government as delegates to elect a governorship candidate, which incidentally he had agreed by himself would be his son-in-law. So he now breached the local government law. Instead of using the ward system we have in our state, he made every autonomous community a ward to produce councillor, thereby attempting to produce 636 councillors in Imo State, 27 local government chairmen, 27 vice chairmen, secretaries of local government, supervisors of local governments, so that they will have sure votes to elect his son-in-law in the primaries of APC. That was why that election went on without any notice by ISEC. That was why he did not constitute an election tribunal to hear disputes that will arise from that election. That was why those people were sworn in 2 days after the purported election. That was why there were no other political parties participating. That was why political parties that went to court and civil society groups that went to court were stifled, and the election went on, embracing disregard to the pending court cases, embracing disregard to my case.
I appreciate the background which you have given,
now,
but you've also not. I understand, but you've also not talked about the Owerri Federal High Court judgment. But we'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll take a look at these issues that you have raised in a moment. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. Now, Mr. Onwegbu, I was asking about the High Court, the Federal High Court's judgment that the 27 local government chairmen are leaning on. They said that, well, they got a judgment. They also referred to the Supreme Court judgment about Ekiti State. And they're saying, well, this is what the law says. How hard is it for this government to obey that court judgment? What do you have to say about that?
Thank you very much. Let us, the judgment you are talking about is a judgment of a case they commenced even before the administration of the defunct administration of Governor of Ihedioha even took the resolution by the Imo State House of Assembly asking that they be suspended. Under the local government law, the Imo State House of Assembly has jurisdiction to investigate the local governments, which was what was started under Ihedioha. These gentlemen went to court trying to stop the House of Assembly from performing its legislative roles. And eventually the House of Assembly recommended for their suspension, and the then governor implemented that recommendation. They went to the Federal High Court against those who were appointed as TC chairmen to superintend over the affairs of the local government while the inquiry by the House of Assembly lasted. They neglected to appear before the House of Assembly because those who were sponsoring them believed that they were stronger than the House of Assembly. Now, when the court, that Federal High Court, they went to against those people in occupation of the offices, continued hearing the matter. Eventually, the Ihedioha administration was sacked by the Supreme Court. Now, without doing anything else, they continued with that case and ended up getting a judgment against those who had left office more than 4 or 5 months before that time. And in the last paragraph of the judgment, the court, in an effort to grant reliefs not sought, now mentioned those who had been appointed by Governor Hope Uzodimma to superintend over the affairs of the local government. Parties who were not sued, parties who were not served any court process. Now, those persons have gone on appeal and filed an appeal against that judgment that went
just a moment, Mr. Onwegbu. I'm wondering how this whole thing comes to play. Just a moment. A judgment has been given by a court, and it is about certain institutions, not individuals. Do we have to call back the people who are no longer in office to execute a judgment that's supposed to be executed by an institution and not certain individuals? Does the fact that a governor has been ousted, just a moment, does the fact that a governor has been ousted, does it defeat or nullify the relevance of the court judgments?
When the judgment goes to give orders against persons who were not sued, those persons have a right to go on appeal, and they have gone on appeal and obtained the stay of execution. It has nothing to do with the governor. It's a judicial process that must flow to the end. And when you have submitted to a judicial process, you cannot resort to self-help. Every Nigerian has a right of protection under the law, under the constitution. And if a person has gone on appeal, and the court of appeal and the court that gave that judgment has stayed that execution of that judgment, you can no longer start talking about enforcement until you're able to win the case at the appeal court or at the Supreme Court, as the case may be. That was what Okorocha did to my team. And that was why we kept quiet until he exhausted his tenure. So it is not a sympathetic thing. It is not a matter of sentiment. It's a matter of allowing the due process to flow. When Okorocha was there, we all were complaining that he didn't obey due process. Now, Governor Uzodimma is there obeying due process, and they want to go to the self-help. They want to go to the field. They want to cause a riotous situation. They want to breach the peace of Imo State on 30th of November. Who is paying the piper?
Honorable Bachu, now hearing
the crisis was
hearing Mr. Onuegbu saying that, well, those parties have gone to court and they've gotten a stay of execution regarding that judgment that was given by the Federal High Court. Is that new to you? Does that change your plan to still resume office on the 30th of this month?
Well, I want to refer to what the Honorable Commissioner said, but staying Honorable. I am happy that what we are enjoying today is a judgment gotten by him and 26 others. And that judgment was delivered by Justice Abaji, who incidentally has been promoted to the Supreme Court. And in one of the reliefs they sought, when I was going through the judgment, relief number 4 hammered basically on their tenure, that their tenure was to last for 2 years. And that they wanted the court to put effect to the fact that their tenure was to last for 2 years. I have the judgment with me here. Now, they got into office on the 8th, or the election was done on the 5th of August, 2010. He is saying that we were hurriedly sworn in. They were sworn in on the election was done on the 6th of August 2010, and they were sworn in on the 8th of August 2010. Incidentally, that tenure was supposed to expire on the 7th of August 2012 because that tenure was for a two-year term. Now he is talking about the fact that the House of Assembly, that their tenure was for, that the House of Assembly made a law, but he is a lawyer. He knows the provision of Section 1.3. That Section 1.3 says, any act of House of Assembly or any law that is inconsistent with the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to the extent of that inconsistency, the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall take precedent. He is a lawyer. He knows Section 1.3.
Right.
And it is a decided case by Supreme Court in Nigeria that there is no House of Assembly that should make law that is not going to put the administration of the local government in perspective.
I know. I'm asking.
There will be no abridging of local government
Honorable
administration in
Badru, I'm asking
that
specifically.
Is elite judgment between Samuel Olubimi,
right,
13 others, and the Ekiti State government.
Okay, I'm asking specifically if you're aware. I'm asking specifically if you're. Honorable Badru, can you hear me?
The governor has a right to do what
Honorable Badru, can you hear me?
To truncate a local government that is elected by the people.
Right.
Because the Constitution of Nigeria in Section 7.1, they have said it is sacrosanct.
Okay, if I can come in now. I'm asking specifically now about the judgment which you are also leaning on from the Federal High Court, Owerri. I'm asking if you are aware that the parties have gone to court to appeal and they got a stay of execution. I'm asking if you're aware and if that has changed your decision or the plan to take office on the 30th of this month. That's what I'm asking about specifically.
Not change our plan. One, because but the barrister failed to let you know. It has not changed our plan. That there is he is saying that there's a stop of execution. It has not changed our plan because he should, as a lawyer, that's what they call judgment in rem. Judgment in rem, there is a judicial pronouncement by the Supreme Court, and we know that there is a trial court, there is a lower court, and there is an appellate court. Section 230 of Nigerian Constitution provides for Supreme Court as the appellate court. And Section 235 of Nigerian Constitution says that the judgment of Supreme Court is final. That except for a prerogative of mercy, the case of a prerogative of mercy, where the President of Nigeria can grant pardon, state pardon, to a convicted, to a state pardon, even a governor, because of the power they have as executive governor and the President of Nigeria. The Supreme Court has given a judgment, and that judgment is final. So there is no lower court that can talk about an injunction. When I mean that a stay, because there is what they call judgment in rem. The judgment in Ekiti is not different from the judgment. The judgment in Ekiti will be applicable to any state.
Honorable Batu, so you're not relying on the judgment. You're not relying on the judgment of the Federal High Court anymore because you've not mentioned that.
No, we went to court. What we went to court to do in the Federal High Court was to seek FAC not to release money to illegitimate government. The local government are occupied by ghost workers as we speak. When you go through the judgment delivered by Justice by the judge, Ringim Tijani, he made it clear that he cannot go into a case that has been decided by Court of Appeal. He cannot equally go into a case that has been decided by the Supreme Court. That what he has before him is the fact that he has jurisdiction according to Section 251. The jurisdiction he has is to make law that will bind a federal agency. And we went there to seek for what? That the federal agency should be stopped from giving money to illegitimate occupants of the local government. Because the Supreme Court has said so, that every occupant that is not in line with the Constitution of Nigeria is an aberration. You cannot occupy the local government and the council illegally. The Supreme Court has said it in the case delivered on the 17th of July 2016, 17th of December 2016, in a landmark judgment delivered by the Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Chima Saint-Usweze. He made it clear that despite the fact that the House of Assembly were given powers to make laws, but the laws that the powers that the Constitution gave to them is not to make laws is not to make law that will breach an elected local government chairman, elected local government council.
Honorable Mbachu, just a moment, Honorable Mbachu. Let's take on let's bring this to the commissioner now. Mr. Onugbu, the facts are also there right before your face as well. The Supreme Court has ruled on this one too many times, and then the Constitution is also very clear about the independence of each tier of the government, the local government inclusive, even though the states have some administrative supervision, oversight over the local government. So that one is there. The Supreme Court has ruled on that. Do you think that this judgment of a lower court supersedes a Supreme Court judgment, which you lawyers say sometimes is like, once that precedent is there, it's like law?
The important thing is for you to appreciate that every case is dealt with on its own circumstances. That the Supreme Court set a guideline.
Even though there is a precedence?
Does not mean that if situation arises in future,
even though there is, are you saying that
that was why they went to court?
Just a moment, Mr. Onugbu, just a moment.
Yes.
Are you saying that the cases are different even though a Supreme Court judgment already gave a precedence?
Yes, the Supreme Court said nobody is entitled to dissolve an elected local government administration.
Very good.
The Supreme Court gave the House of Assembly authority to legislate for the administration of the local governments. The House of Assembly creates a local government that has a 3-year tenure. Now, the House of Assembly has powers to oversight the local government administration. And the Imo State House of Assembly constituted a committee to oversight the gentleman and his colleagues. They refused to appear, and the Imo State House of Assembly, in line with the law, Local Government Administration Law of Imo State, as amended, made recommendation that the governor then suspend them. They went to court to challenge that process. It is not the same as my case because they were not then asked to go. Now, he talked about 2-year tenure. I don't know. You are intervening. I think you should. I think you should.
Court has given a judgment.
Keep quiet so that I exhaust my point. Now, at what stage did the local government law in Imo State become amended under Okorocha to now create a 3-year tenure he's claiming? There was no amendment. It was always a 3-year tenure law. Now, if you have gone to court and obtained a judgment, and the adverse party elects to list, and the adverse party goes on appeal, and there is a stay of execution of that order, you cannot resort to self-help at all. Secondly, if you want to enforce the judgment of a court, you go back to that court for enforcement, to invoke the powers of the bailiff and the sheriffs of court to enforce a judgment. You don't enforce a judgment by going to resort to force or self-help, to hire thugs, to destroy government property, or to destroy public institutions and breach the peace. So what is important is that my friend should keep quiet and let the due process flow. If he knew...
Mr. Onugbo, you really haven't answered the question here. Mr. Onugbo, you have not really, answered the question here. Should that have happened in the first place? That's the question here. The Supreme Court already ruled on this.
The House of Assembly has right to constitute the committee.
But does the House of Assembly have the power to remove some people from office, according to that precedent judgment of the Supreme Court?
No, the House of Assembly recommended that the executive governor then suspend them to allow the inquiry and the conclusion of the inquiry. There was no time their tenure was dissolved or terminated by the House of Assembly or the then governor. What is important is that they went to court, and that due process must be allowed to flow. That is the position. And you have to remember that these are the same people who were campaign coordinators of an AA candidate during governorship election. How can they approbate and reprobate? Today you are in APC, tomorrow you are campaigning for AA, the next day you are in APC. People are trying to put reverse gear to things that don't exist, while their vehicle is headed on a different direction.
Okay, gentlemen, here's what we'll do. We'll get Honorable Mbachu's response to that talk about which party, what affiliations he has. But let's see if we can widen this and get a third perspective. We have joining us via Zoom Mr. Matthias Emerbe, who's a legal practitioner. He's also the publicity secretary, Imo Progressive Lawyers Association. Good morning. I'm sure you've been following the conversation. And for a lot of people, they're thinking, isn't this complex? But from where you sit, looking at the merits, if I can use those terms, of this case, is it really that complex?
With due respect, thank you very much for bringing me in. The law remains the law. When the Supreme Court made that pronouncement to the effect that you cannot suspend an elected local government, as it were, what they are saying by implication is that, look, my friend, you cannot approbate and reprobate, because the implication is like what you have in a state presently.
Okay, Mr. Merribe, we seem to be getting a lot of feedback. Not like feedback, but in terms of audio, there's too much feedback. So we'll try to resolve that, and we'll come back to you in a moment. Please, let's work on that. We'll be back to you in a moment. But Honorable Mbachu, let me just allow you to respond to some of the issues Mr. Onugbo raised regarding your party affiliations and some other issues. If you could just go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say is that the honorable commissioner here, Barrister Honorable, has forgotten that he got a judgment at the Court of Appeal. And he's not saying the truth of all that transpired in Imo State. He got a judgment on the 7th of July, when their tenure was just 21 days to the end of their tenure, because their tenure ultimately was supposed to expire on the 7th of August. And because the then governor, the Governor Richard Okorocha, the then governor of Imo State, because of his nature towards adherence to the rule of law, he never appealed this case. So as we speak, Barrister Honorable is saying, as a lawyer that he is, that the court where they got a judgment saying that no governor has power, for which I'm today enjoying, because a court of appeal has ruled on the fact that, not a court of appeal in anywhere apart Imo State. So we have section 2871 that says that any judgment of court of appeal, section 2872, any judgment of court of appeal shall be applicable in any part of this country by all authorities and persons. That is what section 2872 says. But as we speak, we have a judgment we're enjoying, gotten by him and 26 others, that says no governor shall have power to sack elected chairman of Imo State. They did not say, the only thing they said was, because they ordained the local government chairman, that because the constitution has made it clear that section 7.1, the ambiguity of section 7.1 has been resolved by a court of appeal. It's been resolved by a Supreme Court. The ambiguity, which is ultimately created by the governors, believing that because they said that the governors shall have to make laws for the good administration of the local government, they changed it by going to ask the House of Assembly, that is ultimately their lucky, to make laws to go against the constitutional authority of government that is enabled by section 3.6 of the Nigerian Constitution. Section 3.6 of the Nigerian Constitution provides for local government, just like section 2.2 of Nigerian Constitution provides for the states and the capital of Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Honorable Batu, a moment here.
That the House of Assembly has no power to make laws. The House of Assembly made law, and they gave us what they call amendment to the local government administration law 15, 2000, as amended. It was amended to do what? To change the tenure, which they enjoyed for 2 years. It was amended to 3 years. I have it here. Is he here with me? Now, the same House of Assembly that the Constitution has given power to make laws for the good governance of the local governments gave the then governor of Imo State power to do what they call autonomous community election. It is
let's get to Mr. Meribe now. Yeah, let's get to Mr. Meribe now. I think we've resolved that audio challenge. So if you can hear me, please go ahead. I mean, you think that this is not really that difficult, is it?
It's not difficult because I hope you can hear me. It's not difficult because by virtue of section 7.1 of the 1999 Constitution.
Not again. Well, we still have that same challenge, so we'll see if we can resolve that. But let's take this back to our Abuja studio. This Honorable, well, he thinks that's Mr. Meribe, judging from his opening comments, he thinks the law is clear on this. And, I mean, for a lot of people in Imo states, they want a resolution. I mean, this back and forth, they would say it's not doing them any good. For the 27 local government chairmen who were elected, they say that people elected them to serve them. Your government is saying, well, we need to conduct something fresh because on one hand, we're not involved in this and, well, there's a judgment. You say there's a stay of appeal, but we still need a resolution. So is the government planning to make any concession, have a discussion with the 27 local government chairmen? I mean, beyond the politics now, let's talk about governance. Is your government planning to make any concession?
Well, the important thing is that we must bear in mind that there's a government in place. When you think there is no government and you think you can draw your powers from elsewhere or your negotiation, you should ask them if they went to court and this matter is pending and they desire a settlement out of court. It is for them to approach the government in power. But when all the feelers we get is the threat the harassment, the propaganda. I don't think anybody would negotiate under such threatening situation. What is important in Imo is that as of today, the local governments are being administered in Imo State. And there are two claimants. There are two claimants. My set as of today is still before the Supreme Court, challenging the purported 2-year tenure my friend is alluding to. He has chosen not to talk about it. The case was pending in the Supreme Court before their purported election. And it was in flagrant disobedience of even the Supreme Court directive that that election should not hold. These are matters the then Attorney General, Nlemedim, came to court at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that election should not go on because of this pending case. But because they wanted delegates that will vote for them in APC primaries, they rushed through that process during the then strike that was happening in the country. The important thing to note is that the current government is a sensitive government, a due process government, a sympathetic government that will be more ready and willing to look at matters dispassionately. But you should ask yourself, if this local government election was so important, why did the former government of Chief Okorocha not talk with me and my team? Why did he not conduct elections 7.5 years into his 8-year tenure? Why was it mischievously done to procure delegates for APC? And when it didn't work, when God intervened with one man with God, they went to AA, all of them, became campaign directors, got government vehicles as campaign vehicles, which they are still in possession of, to campaign for an AA candidate for governorship election. And when they lost, they were listed as witnesses at the tribunal, listed as the witnesses at every court. They filed the cases in court, more than 4. About 3 has been dismissed, except this one that is pending on the Court of Appeal now. So they should wait for the Court of Appeal to decide the matter, or do what is politically necessary by trying to reach the present government and recognizing that there is a government in place in Imo State. You cannot continue behaving as if you are not a law-abiding citizen of Imo State, operating from Abuja to terrorize the peaceful Imo people, and then we all consider and clap for you and wait for you to do what you wish.
Okay, two things now. Two issues now.
8 years ago.
Right, 2 issues
Yes.
now. Mr. Honorable Bachu, well, he has raised this issue of your party affiliations time and again, saying that you joined the party and now you're back in the APC. Do you want to clear the air on that briefly?
Yes, I want to clear the air on that. Yes, I want to clear the air on that. Yes, I want to clear the air on that.
Air is yours to clear now.
I want to ask Oyinyeonebu, who is more of APC, does he have his party membership card as he speak? He doesn't have it. I have my party membership card. I can produce my party membership card on demand. Is Oyinyeonebu still asking or still saying that when our president, the anti-corruption Caesar, came to Owerri, Imo State, during the campaign period in 2019, he said, vote across party line. Is he equally saying that the president was that vote across party line? Is he equally saying that the president is not a member of APC? I am a member of APC. As I speak, Oyinyeonebu does not even know the ward chairman of APC in his ward. He doesn't know it because he is an APC by blood, by thoughts, and by thinking. That is to tell you.
How you tested his blood and his thoughts to know that he's that's quite interesting.
Blood, but he's APC by thinking, and he's
once again you say that as though you've done a blood test.
PDP by blood.
All right, but let me just take up this issue of negotiation.
He's not a member of APC.
Right, briefly, let me take up the issue of negotiation just as we wind down on this.
Party membership card here with me.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
I'm a member of APC, and
right.
To crown it all, Oyinyeonebu.
Just a moment. Let's wind this down because he mentioned negotiation. Are you willing to negotiate with the government in any sense?
The government of Imo State is very unfair to us. Remember, we were in Abuja January 14th when the Supreme Court gave a landmark judgment, ushering in APC government in Imo State. We were in Abuja and we all celebrated. We were 25 local government chairmen that came to Abuja. We came and when the judgment was given, we celebrated the judgment. We went to His Excellency's house in Maitama where he lives. We all celebrated.
The question is really simple.
When there was a review, we equally came to
Honorable
do what
Bachu,
they
just
call
a very
solidarity
quick one so that we can wrap this all up. Just a moment.
Yes.
Are you willing to negotiate with the government of the day? It's a pretty simple question. Are you still there?
Why are we are members of the same party? The
So-
governor is APC.
Okay.
Is
So, in other words, you are willing to resolve this conversation. You are willing to resolve this issue at a round table with the governor.
We
Okay,
have
all right.
made a lot of entreaties.
Okay.
We have written to the governor. There is nothing we have not done. Even Trey now enable himself.
Right.
His brother
Okay.
is acting Agon chairman.
So we do expect to see some form of resolution right after this. But gentlemen, we would like to thank you so much. This has been quite eye-opening. Honorable John Bachu, Executive Chairman, Isialambana, Local Government Area of Imo State, as well as Honorable Inaya, Honorable Commissioner for Lands, Imo State, legal practitioner, and a former local government chairman. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your thoughts. And as well as Mr. Matthias Ameribe, we didn't quite get, your opening comments, but would like to thank you so much for your time as well.
At least, according to him, the law is pretty clear.
Oh, yes. It's clear.
Well, there are some comments also from you on this matter, well, on matters that have been raised today. Professor Enakena, yours comes first. Says, 3 arms of government. Nigeria runs 3 independent arms of government. State laws are not consistent with federal. If state laws are not consistent with federal, there will be of no effect. Thus, governors running states like UNPROs and circumventing the Constitution of Nigeria must be forestalled to avoid constitutional crisis. I think what he's saying there essentially is to ensure that, look, state laws and the federal government laws are still supposed to be consistent.
Well, Tunde Alimi tweets on electricity, says real competition will happen only when a consumer has choices of determining which disco to buy electricity from, and not just forced to a disco, or I'll just say, and not just a disco forced on the consumer.
In other words, you should be able to port from power sector to power, from disco to another.
Well, that's what he's saying.
Privatization, well, Skibon's also having this one, says the privatization is a good idea. However, the discos should be looked into with strict laws. No matter how the Gencos perform, if the discos don't accept the load, the Gencos would have to shut down to avoid overfrequency. Many Gencos are running at a loss for that reason.
Obukola Bamidele is also asking for synergy amongst the power players, the major players in the power sector. Thank you so much for that tweet as well.
Well, that's the much we can take of the program today. Thank you very much. Don't forget the conversation continues on all of our social media platforms. And of course, you can watch a replay of this and several other programs on this channel, on our YouTube channel. Until then, my name is Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
I'm Kayode Kikele.